What would it be like to be Abraham? Knowing that the pressure would start from you and your lineage would go down to the Son of Man. And you hear a still voice that says, abandon your land. Take your wife and nephew, for with you I have your purpose planned. You have no GPS in hand, but God says through you, your descendants will expand.
Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of One-on-One with Stephanie. I'm Stephanie Jumbo. Today I'm super excited as this man I have wanted to have a chat with for a very long time, who I have been able to catch. He based multi-award winning rapper and a gospel singer. He started converting rap or poetry into rap at the age of 15.
It's one thing to read his story then get all preachy, but it's another thing to actually be in his shoes and realize that without God, you will stay needy. Hear me. Abraham was a sign of hope since the days of Noah's Ark, and he showed godly character when God tested his heart.
He's a very passionate man for God. What we're actually doing this, it's really hard to find young people who have a huge heart for God, but this guy is very fascinating with his stories, and what he does is just mind-blowing. Rodney, it's such a huge pleasure to have you here. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Feeling a bit tired, but feeling good.
Welcome to Melbourne. He's a multi-award winning Sydney-based artist. Rodney, so tell me a little bit about your story, your journey. You started converting poetry into rap music. How has that been for you?
It's interesting because everything I'm doing now is completely opposite to what I wanted to be. I grew up in a household where my father wasn't involved in my life, so it made me very sort of bitter, very resentful, very angry towards men. So I had a very big problem with authority, particularly with male authority and stuff like that. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up with Christian values. In fact, I was the opposite. Very wanting to see people hurt, wanting to see people broken, because everyone else had a father, but why not me? So I started, for some reason, when I started going to church and the anger in me was subsiding, I needed to find sort of like a medium where I can take out my anger and frustration, because you can't be dropping F-bombs in church because they'll look at you funny. So Mum was in the choir, sister was in the choir for some time, my brother was a drummer in the choir and he was a music producer. And so on the side, this shy yet angry person was just writing how he felt. And my old church, Living Word Worship Center, I shared one of my poems to two of my friends, and it was at youth camp. They read it and they were like, wow, this is good. I thought, you know how you have friends when you're really bad at something but they want to encourage you anyway? I thought they were doing that. Forgive me for thinking that, but yeah. So they told me to keep going, and I kept going, and I kept going, and then one day I just thought, okay, let me make this into a rap song, because I couldn't sing. I did that, performed at Maryland's. My mum came, didn't know I was performing. She cried, people cried, everyone cried. I thought the presence of God was in the room, or I was horrible. We will never know till this day. Mum always thinks I'm good. Every mum thinks their son is good.
Of course.
So yeah, that started, prophecy started, and then it just became apparent to me that I was called.
When you started converting your poetry into rap, at what point would you say you came one-on-one, like in contact with God?
That was before I made the decision to rap.
What age would that be?
15. So it's funny because 15 was the time where I became born again, converted poems into raps, and then started off in the ministry. I started off straight away. So I never got into a period where, how does ministry work, or, I just went straight into it. I found Jesus, I need to share Jesus the way I found Jesus. And that was through guys that looked like me, guys that shared their heart like me, and I wanted to do it straight away.
What's very fascinating about your story is the fact that with what you went through as a little boy, for you to have just dump them and find this rest in God, it's quite encouraging. How would you encourage any young person who would have gone through similar situation? What really made you drop? What made you? There would have been a conviction
I think the one thing I had to come to terms with was the fact that it wasn't my fault. Somehow we think that when our parents are fighting or divorcing, it has to do with us and had nothing to do with me. It took me a long time to realize that because every time I saw my parents fighting, it was in the presence of me. And so when I came to terms that it wasn't my fault, then I can start validating myself and who I am in God. And then I came to terms with, okay, my father, physical father wasn't there, but I had a spiritual father that was always there. And so if I couldn't trust in man, there was someone I can trust in that wouldn't share my secrets, that would take me for who I am, love me for who I am, and then use me for who I am, and then do the same. So the one thing I encourage is that God is real, but don't believe in a God that is always falsely advertised to you. The God that will make everything disappear in one day, because it's a process. You know, you're not going to stop swearing in a day. You're not going to stop drinking in a day. It's a process. And when you understand it's a process, you won't be so hard on yourself when you make mistakes, because we're growing every day.
Speaking about young people, in this day and age, it would be very difficult to sort of identify yourself as a Christian because of all the things we see, all the things we go through as school, as students, and at workplace. How it's quite difficult to put that question to you, but I really want to know, because I want every young person out there to know how they can actually identify with God and still live their lives.
Well, what I speak about in my administration is quite contrary to what Christians speak about. I'll be proud to say that I'm not the most perfect person. The perception is that if you're in ministry or if you're a gospel artist, you have to be a particular way in order to fit the criteria of God. But my thing is, you don't.
How do you mean?
You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to go to church X amount of times in a year to be more righteous than the person who doesn't go to church. That doesn't mean don't go to church. It just means that doesn't make you a Christian. God makes you that. What made me the most effective is when I realized that I didn't have to fit within the box of what society told me to be in order to be effective. So that's why I started braiding my hair. That's why I started dressing the way I'm dressing and bearding myself up, because it was never effective to me to have a guy in a tie, in a suit, clean cut, telling me that God will make a way. I didn't identify with that. I identified with people who were like me, that didn't look a certain way, didn't talk a certain way, but you could see that God was evident in their life. And I think when people realize that they shouldn't succumb to the judgment of others in order to be effective, but rely on what God says about them, it will take them a long way.
Relying on what God says about them. Your music is quite intriguing. If anyone out there has actually listened to any of his songs, they're very captivating. Because you tell Bible stories of people who have influenced you, and people can actually relate with the lyrics. Because how do you get the inspiration to write some of those things?
Well, my confession is that I don't like reading. I hated reading. Even till now, I struggle with reading, and I know because it's kind of contradictory and stuff like that. But I found that a lot of people felt the same way I felt. And so I was thinking, okay, as young people, we don't like reading, but we like things by visuals or by hearing. So I thought, what's one way that people could know the Bible in a way that's in their language, in their style, and they can still be educated with things that happen. You go through the Old Testament, so-and-so gave birth to so-and-so, and so-and-so gave birth to so-and-so. It becomes really dry. So I thought, let me read some stories, let me just study it, let me see how this would be applicable in the 21st century and just write about it. And so I wrote about my influences, and Samson is one of them. Samson is a dude that taught me that you shouldn't put your love for the world or for other people ahead of what God has for you. And so when I learned that, I'm thinking, well, maybe other young people want to hear that. And so I put myself in the shoes of other people of what I would want to hear, and then I did it.
There's this song that resonates, that will probably resonate with every young man out there. And the one you did about the Delilah in you, and the Sam saying the Delilah. And it almost felt like it was a true story. Because when you listen to it, you can actually identify with most of the things you say there. How do people relate with you when they see you in person?
I'm not sure people know what to make out of you. And I like that. I like that sometimes I'm a mystery because maybe to the older generation I'm rebelling, but to the younger generation I'm stuck up. But at the end of the day, I realize it's not even about me. And the more I care less about the things that the world offers, the more effective God makes me. And I think it's the fact that people see me now and they know I just don't care. I don't care if I go platinum, I don't care if I win awards, I just want to give people the same opportunity I got. And I'm proud to say that you don't even need to be calling me a pastor. I don't even need the approval of pastors. As long as I'm able to touch one person in a genuine approach, then that's my job done. And I think people respect the honesty.
Well, he's a prophet, by the way. But prophecy, it's something that most people are not used to, especially here in Australia. How are you able to cut across and pass your message across to the people out there?
Don't know what's wrong. Pilate gazed at him, didn't have a clue. Death or life, it was hard for him to choose. Jesus did no crime. Pilate was confused, shocked by everything, don't know what to do. Crucify him!